Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, all my NB friends. You are tuned to Sacred Voices on KGNU. It is a nice Friday afternoon in our great state of Colorado. Pretty chilly out there. Let me tell you a bit about Sacred Voices. So, Sacred Voices is a non-profit organization based in Denver, Colorado. We are focused on providing poetry and spoken word education and a venue for those who would like to share their voice for young people as well as everybody else who would like to share their voice. With me today, I have Mateo Manuel Vela. He is one of our facilitators for our poetry workshops and has a few things to talk about an organization in his school as well. So, Mateo, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm pretty good. And that reminds me, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Aston. I am also a member of the board of directors for Sacred Voices, just as you are. So tell me, what brings you here today? Tell me about this organization that you're working with.
My student organization that I work with is called Umasi Mecha, the CU Boulder. I'm also a current student at CU Boulder studying international affairs and ethnic studies. And a little bit about the group. So Umasi Mecha has been around on the Boulder campus for about going on 53 years now. So it's been there for a pretty long time. It's pretty much one of their longest standing Chicanx, Latinx organizations, and really has sort of a reputation for doing community work, community activism. I guess I can just lead off with talking about some of the different programs that we offer and different endeavors that we've been up to in the past year or so. Um, so one of the programs that we run actually every year is a summer program called the Aquetza Youth Summer Leadership Program, which is specifically for Latinx and Chicanx youth from across Colorado. And what we do is we bring about a group of 50 of them or so high school students to come to CU Boulder for about 10 days in the summer and just learn about local Chicano history, learn about their identities, and just really delve into more like social justice work and education. We do a lot of that through art. Um, so so, for example, like students can take spoken word workshops. I lead some there for them. They can also, delve into other mediums and such to explore their identities. We've had some students who do like hip hop and like rap music, for example, or even like drawing and some other visual arts. And overall, it's just a really great time for students to really get to know themselves. And like I mentioned, Umasi Mecha has we've been running this program now actually for about let's see, I think almost 10 years at this point. So even prior to when I was, a student at CU and got involved with Umasi Mecha, that's how long the Aketa program has been running. But it's just some really great work. So that's one of the things we do, and I guess we can kick it off from there. I guess any questions thus far?
Sure, yeah. So it's a program for Latinx and Chicanx students to come and it sounds like learn about their own history locally, like
Mhm.
within the Colorado area. Does that seem like something that it seems like something they're lacking from
Mhm.
regular public education if
Mhm.
they're learning it there? Um, is that something that you notice with a lot of these students that they don't know their own histories?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I think that was actually one of the main reasons that the Aketsa program came to be. Really, is because the main people who sort of started it really just recognize that first of all, there's no information really that we learn about Chicanx history or Latinx history in school. Um, and also, we don't really get to learn from people who look like us or share our same experiences, right? So definitely, there's a lot of students who come in, and even though they've grown, they a lot of them have grown up in Colorado all of their lives or most of their life. Like, will come to the program with um, very little knowledge actually about just the local history and kind of some of the great movements that kind of shaped their experience today. And I would say it's really empowering for a lot of them actually to learn that history for the first time and to learn it from from local community activists and people who were really like having their best interest in mind.
Yeah, how does that change their perspective on things if they, come in and they learn all these things about, to a certain extent, themselves, their own history? How does that change their perspective on things moving forward after the program?
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that we've been working really hard to understand, right? Because it is like our program does get a little bit of funding from the university. So one of the components of that comes with research, right? So we've been doing research about like, well, what is it about this experience that is so impactful or transformative? Because I mean, I myself went through the program when I was a high schooler, so even just the fact that I wanted to return, right? Like that's a question that we ask from some of our other staff members who have also gone through the program. It's like, well, what makes this so transformative, right? Because I would really say that that impact is that students come out of the program having a very different understanding of the world around them, and a different sort of relationship to education, right? Because our program, it's not a traditional like college prep program. Like that's not really the focus of it, right? And you know, I I honestly think that we are probably one of very few programs, like not just in the state of Colorado, but really in the United States, that is based on a college campus, but is not, college prep focused. It's more so about, learning about the community, learning about the histories, and sharing space with one another. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would just say, I've personally witnessed a lot of my students, it's really gratifying to just see kind of the wheels turning in their heads and seeing like, oh, like that they're able to connect a lot of the issues that they face in their daily life, to broader issues that are happening in the world, or to, broader issues that were faced by people in the past too, right? So they can see kind of the systems and the inequities and how they're a pattern.
Yeah, and do you see? I don't know if you have enough of a time frame to really see if like the youths who go through that program, do they end up going to CU and then pursuing like ethnic studies programs and going through? It seems
Yeah.
like you did. That's your
Yeah.
trajectory. So, is that a
Yeah.
common thing?
Yeah, I would say it's actually really interesting, but I have seen that actually quite a few times. And we don't really collect data necessarily on like where the students go, right? Like for college, at least not at this point, right? Like that hasn't been the main focus of our program. But I have noticed even just being a part of Umasi Mecha, right, which runs this, is that I will say I feel like it is kind of an indirect driver for some students to come to CU Boulder, right? Whereas previously, like if they hadn't participated in a program like that, like they might have been less likely to choose CU. I mean, I think that's certainly the case for myself, right? Because part of the reason you choose to go to a university is like, your perception of whether you'll have community or not when you're there, especially if you're like Latinx or just a BIPOC student in general. But yeah, I've definitely noticed even some of the newer members of Umasi Mecha have actually been alumni of this program, and it's great because it's an indirect effect, right? Like our whole program is not centered on getting students to come to CU or to like learn about that experience per se, but a lot of them just of their own drive, learning about this, history, learning about that localized history in Boulder, and like recognizing the community that's there, just make that decision of their own volition. So yeah.
Yeah, it seems like compared to, you said how they're not the same, like this isn't the same as a typical college prep program like others are, but it seems to
Hmm.
accomplish one of the same goals of, preparing students for that college environment at CU in particular, and then, also enticing them to go there. So it's kind of an
Hmm.
interesting little dynamic there of how your program is effective at doing something that other programs are seeking out to do, just in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I don't know, now that you point that out, I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? I think I've thought about that a little bit as well, but just because there are other college prep programs, and don't get me wrong, like I think college prep programs have their place, right? Like they're we are in this sort of system where students not a lot of students, really receive education in terms of like, preparation for college, like what that experience is like. But I think one of the things that those programs often miss is that other component of like critiquing kind of like the system that you're in and validating that just on a very real level, right? Because like I mentioned before, a lot of students, when they're deciding where to go to college, like, yes, they're looking at the programs, they're looking at the course offerings, but they're at the very end of the day, what gets people to stay, at least a lot of what I've seen is, this notion of community, right? And I think yeah, my bad, just got this random text. But yeah.
Yeah, a sense of community will definitely be a big impact in the decision of where to go to school, because
Mhm.
college is a pretty social time, and then building up your community at that stage in your life is really important. So, yeah, I definitely see the
Mhm.
value in that. So why don't you give us a little, like a teaser of something you would learn at this program? Like, tell us about a local Chicanx or Latinx person from Colorado, and give a little bit of their story, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah, so what I can do actually is tell you kind of the main sort of history, I guess, that we teach at the Aketsa program. And it's actually a very localized history to CU Boulder that a lot of like older members of the Chicano community or the Chicanx community know about this story, and it's actually one that's recognized depending on where you are, right? Like I've met some people in Arizona even who know about this, but in particular, UMAS back in the day, back in the 1970s, so before it evolved into a student organization, it actually started off as a program, a university program to recruit more Chicano students to the CU Boulder campus. So this was back in like the 1970s. So I think 1968 actually was the first year that it was operating. And then a couple of years after that, what ended up happening was is that um, so the program was primarily run actually by Chicano students who wanted to increase, the recruitment and retention of members of their community at the institution. And again, during that time frame, right? Like this was during the time where there was all these civil rights protests, like um, you know, still seeing the legacy of like, segregation and all of these different policies. So this was a very radical sort of undertaking for these students, and essentially, what ended up happening is that, from 1968 to about 1972, they increased the amount of Chicano students that were at the campus from just literally nine students who had been a part of UMAS at the time, which stood for United Mexican American Students. And then through the course of those 4 years in 1972, they increased the numbers to over 1,400 students. So
Wow.
that it's like a blip to like uh, just a huge amount of students, right? And again, keeping it in context, right? Like I've gotten into conversations with people about this, but I'm just imagining like being, for example, like a white administrator at that time and seeing this explosion really of like brown students who are coming to the campus with, again, a lot of the racial attitudes that were prevalent at that time, right? Like there was definitely a lot of stereotyping, a lot of discrimination that, these students had faced. Um, but so that being said, things came to a heel 2 years after 1972. So in 1974, basically the university. Oh, my bad for that. Basically, the university started to take steps to systematically dismantle this program. And
Mm.
this is just basically public information at this point. Like this is, we include this on our about page. This is something that, the university libraries also acknowledge all of these things. But essentially, yeah, they started taking steps to dismantle it. They tried to get some prominent student leaders who were, in the program fired. And then when that didn't work to quell everything, what they ended up doing was taking away financial aid from really radical members of the UMass program. And that of course resulted in protests because students were not going to be able to attend CU Boulder if they didn't have the aid. So essentially what ended up happening is that the students took over a regent building at the time, and then after that they took over a building called Temporary Building 1, which is on the campus, still on the campus today. And during that time, the occupation lasted 3 weeks. And the central, all of this to say, the central story that we really talk about is the story of the occupation and what led to it. But then we also talk about, unfortunately, these two instances that happened in the middle of the occupation. So basically, in the middle of the occupation, there were three UMass students who were, up at Chautauqua Park, which is right outside of the university. And they were all a part of the UMass program and stuff. And basically, they were, in their car, and then um, an explosion went off, and their car got blown up, and they were all killed in that crash. And to this day, law enforcement never looked into that. There's a lot of speculation, really, actually, that law enforcement had something to do with that because there was a lot of government programs at the time that were trying to, again, dismantle these organizations, right? So there was those three individuals who died, and then students were still occupying the building at that time, so they could hear the blast that went off and knew that something was wrong. So needless to say, they found out that three of their friends had gotten murdered, right, in that time, and then unfortunately, 2 days later, the same thing happened. So three other members of this group were blown up in this crash outside of a Burger King that's also really close to campus.
Mm.
So in total, you had six Chicano activists who were murdered, right? Or at least we don't know what the cause of their deaths were, right? As a result of these explosions. And in the end, the occupation did end. The students did get their financial aid, but it was a very jarring time, right? And I think it's something that has left a legacy in Boulder for a very long time. And even though people have tried to sort of erase that history, like it's still a story that has been passed down. So that's really that's like the main story that we talk about. And that's why we have that program at CU specifically.
That's a very, very crazy story. I mean, just thinking about it, because you said that
Yeah.
event happened in 1974 when all of that
Yeah.
happened, and that's really not
Mm-hmm.
that long ago. It's really not.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many
Right.
people who are alive in Boulder right now. They were around to experience that.
Mm.
Like it's not even like one generation removed, and to think all of that was happening
Mm.
just because the population went from 9 to in the thousands for Chicanx and Latinx students
Yeah.
at CU. Like that was the only cause of that. Really, that's just that's crazy to think about, and being so recently too. So yeah, I can
Mm-hmm.
see how that would be a transformative story to hear when you're going into this program.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're
Right.
just joining us, we're talking to Mateo, Manuel, Vela, one of the board of directors members for Sacred Voices, as well as what is your position title at UMass?
Right now I'm just a general member, but in the past I've served as a co-chair for the organization. But yeah, right now just a general member.
Yeah, UMass Imecha at CU Boulder. So yeah, how can people find out more about this organization if they're a young person or they know a young person and they want to, get involved? Is there time still to be a part of that summer program?
Yeah, so we just released our application for youth. So if youth are interested in being a part of the Aketsa program, we're still accepting applications for that. So they can just find that on the Aketsa website. So there's that, and then yeah, I mean, if people are interested in learning more about UMAS, we've got our Instagram page, which is just at UMAS Imecha on Instagram, and then on Facebook we've got our name is Umasi Mecha the CU Boulder, so people can find us there. And yeah, we welcome people. We have meetings every other Thursday from about 5 to 7 p.m. So yeah, if there's any students listening to this or people who are just interested in the meetings, they can roll through.
I know that there's a heavy Boulder audience for KGNU, so I'm sure that there will be some people listening who this will be applicable to, and if so, I encourage you to seek that out. Um, but I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk to you a bit about your facilitator work uh, and your poetry
Yeah.
work in general. So, how long have you been writing and performing poetry?
Ooh, okay, so good question. I've been writing since I was 11, really. And I got introduced to spoken word poetry by a teacher that I had, named Miss Wright. Um, and yeah, she actually introduced me to like Denver spoken word, because she was really good friends with some of the people that ran Slam Nuba at the time. So some older people like Ken Arkind and some other like really great people who were really formative for the Denver scene. So she got me writing in that, and then I started doing slam poetry, so like the competitive form, when I was 15, and really because I made friends with a person who was really into youth spoken word and youth slam poetry, and really pushed me to try out for the Denver Minor Disturbance team at the time, which was the Denver Youth Poetry Slam team. So yeah, and I've just been kind of uh, around doing poetry, performance work, and stuff like that ever since. And yeah.
Yeah, you're a regular at the Sacred Voices open mics for sure, and you also
Right.
yeah, you also do workshops for Sacred Voices for various schools in the metro area. Um, tell us about your experience
Mhm.
getting into those and settling into that role.
Yeah, so I had done a couple of spoken word workshops prior to joining the board of directors for Sacred Voices. In particular with the Aketsa program, which I mentioned earlier, I always do like poetry workshops for them every year since I've been involved with them. So ever since like um 2019, so it'll be my like third summer doing stuff with them. And then I've also served in like some other roles with some other programs as well, doing stuff like that. But yeah, so this past it's been just about over a semester or so that I've been doing work with Sacred Voices, specifically with around workshops. So I've been working with one of the other co-facilitators, Brianna Hill, to teach poetry workshops at the New America School. And then we've also done a couple of other gigs here and there where people have, asked and, needed some poetry workshop facilitators. And it's been really great, honestly. It's been nice to, forge that bond with students and gain some more experience for myself in learning how to facilitate and, learning, all right, like what does it take to be like a good educator, right? Because that's really what it comes down to. Any form of like arts education. So that's it's been a really rewarding experience, and it's been great to forge connections with those students and see them grow in their writing, and yeah, just find that outlet for themselves.
Yeah, that is great. And how would you describe the difference between like, because you've done a lot of workshops in the past that have been like you meet with a group of students for an hour or two and teach them some things and they hopefully come out with a poem, but with the workshops you've been doing recently, I know that you've spent, over a semester like you've said with these students. What is the
Hmm.
difference, getting to know these students over a longer period of time?
Hmm.
What do they get out of it more, would you say?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for them, right, like you mentioned before, right, like the thing about one-off workshops is you don't really know kind of what the impact of that is going to be, right? And I think it's kind of just a cliche that people say about education that you don't really see the impact until much later, right? Like you're kind of just like planting seeds and waiting for them to grow, but you're not going to see it immediately, right? I think the difference between sort of the more one-off workshops and kind of the more like hands-on one-to-one work that we do with the workshops is that we're able to really see that growth over the span of a quarter, over the span of a semester, right? We've had like students, like I remember one student that we had in the past who was she was like graduating, right? And she like at our very last like sort of workshop, she just like sort of thanked me and Bree and was like, "Yeah, thank you all so much. Like this has really helped me just to process my emotions and like go through and all the different things that I'm like going through." And that's when I saw it, right? And it was just a very heartening sort of moment, right? To kind of see that of like, we are creating that like even with just these weekly workshops, we are creating a space for youth to really like explore themselves, which unfortunately in education is not something that students often get, to just be able to explore their identities and explore their feelings surrounding really important things going on in their lives. So I would say that's kind of the biggest difference is you kind of just get more of that opportunity to bond and to really grow.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably one of the biggest advantages to that because, like you're saying, in education you really don't get too many opportunities for a student to really express themselves like creatively or emotionally. It's really just
Hmm.
like teaching to whatever standardized test is coming up. Unfortunately, in a lot of circumstances, so
Hmm.
that's really great. Um, so let's see here. Hmm. I lost my train of thought. Oh, it happens. So yeah, let's see. Let's talk about the open mic a bit and performing.
Yeah.
So you've performed a lot, and how would you recommend people who are getting started with poetry, maybe the people who are the youths who are in your
Hmm.
workshop? How would you talk to them about transitioning from writing your poems down on a piece of paper to performing them for a large group of people?
Yeah. I would say my biggest I feel like I have two pieces of advice, for students who are just now getting into the sort of performance element of spoken word. Um, the first word of advice I would offer is just remember that, everyone starts somewhere, right? Like it can be very intimidating sometimes, right? Because especially in today's world, right? Like there's definitely so many more platforms and a lot of different expectations that have been developed around poetry in and of itself, right? But that was never the point of poetry, and certainly not like spoken word, right? So I think for myself, just remembering that, like even your favorite poet, whether they're like a local or like a national poet or something like that, they all started somewhere, and chances are they were just as nervous as you were, if not even more, right? The first time that they ever performed, like everyone that I speak to, right? Like no one starts off, you know, unnatural at this in the sense that, or more so, like people don't start off as professionals when they first start this off, right? Um, and people may have like a natural inclination towards poetry, but it does take time to sort of refine that and to build comfortability with your stage presence and things like that. So that's the first thing I would say, and the second thing I would say would just be not to compare yourself, right? Kind of, in that same vein, not trying to necessarily, fit a mold of what you believe like other people will think is good, right? But just like being very authentic in who you are and your own self-expression. Of course, you can be influenced by others, and that has its place. But at the end of the day, like you have to remember why you're doing this, and at the core of what spoken word is about, it's really just about speaking about life from your own experience, right? Like that's really what it's about at the end of the day. So those would be my words of advice, and just don't let anybody make you feel like this is not something that you can do, because it's something that anyone who um, wants to do it and can.
Yeah, I think that is great advice. So, once again, I've been talking to Mateo Manuel Vela. Let me give you a chance to plug yourself. Where can people find you or your work?
Yeah, so if people are interested in finding me or my work, they can follow me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Vela, Vela underscore Teo, Teo. So they can find me over there. And then I'm also just on Facebook. Don't have a page yet, but my name on Facebook is Mateo Manuel Vela. And people are, free to add me if they want to, learn more or connect.
That sounds great. And if you are interested in hearing more about Sacred Voices, you can find us online at sacred-voices.org. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Sacred Voices Denver. If you are interested in performing at our next open mic or just attending our next open mic, it will be 2 weeks from today, February 26th. That'll be at 6:30 p.m., and that'll be a virtual open mic, so find more details on our Facebook page. But it has been great talking to you, Mateo. Thank you for coming by.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Aston. Anytime.
Of course. All right. Well, that is that, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.